Well, good morning, friends. How we doing? Great. I like it. I'm going to jump right in. I have about an hour and 17-minute message I want to get through. I'm just kidding. Some of you are like, oh, no. Just kidding. All right, I want to start with a question. How many of you made a New Year's resolution this year? Be honest. Anybody make one? 4 of you. I love it. Anybody quit it so far? Have you quit already? Let me ask you this question. Anybody make one last year? Did you make it through? No. Here's why I bring this up. It's really easy to quit things. It's really easy to quit some of the things that we find difficult, tricky, that we don't want to put effort into. And then there's some things that are not easy to quit, like smoking. If you've ever tried to quit smoking, I hear it's impossible. Or drinking, or gambling, or pornography. It's hard to quit some things, and it's easy to quit others. And what I want to do today as we lay the groundwork for a brand new series called Just Quit. Just quit already. I quit. I'm done. It's over. Wave the white flag. Surrender. Is remind us that we all have things in our lives that we need to quit. Some of us need to quit politics. Following Fox News and CNN and Newsmax and letting that be your only source of hope, your only source of information. Some of us need to quit watching sports because it affects your life the next day or two. That was me about 15 years ago. If my team lost, I was angry. And then I'm like, they don't even know me. I don't even care anymore. I had to quit it. I had to quit watching sports as much because it consumed me. Some of us need to quit a relationship we're in because it's toxic and unhealthy. Some of us need to quit having unverbalized and unrealistic expectations on other people. One of the things when I do pre-marriage counseling with a young couple, one of the things that I say, if you want to undo your relationship, have unverbalized and unrealistic expectations on your partner. You will undo it. They cannot meet it if it's not verbalized. Some of us have to get rid of that. We need to quit having unverbalized, unrealistic goals in a relationship. Some of us need to quit expecting good things to just happen magically and make them happen, work towards them, set out to achieve it. Some of us need to quit being afraid to fail. Who cares if you fail? You messed up. It means you tried. Some of us need to quit being so hard on ourselves because we did fail. There's a lot of things that a lot of us need to quit in 2023. Some of us need to quit playing the victim. It's always somebody else's fault. It's always somebody else's problem. It's always somebody else is to blame. Some of us need to quit social media because all it does is make us criticize, complain, and compare to everything and everybody. And you're like, Dan, you're coming in hot today. Yep, I am. I was off last week, and I'm ready to go. But I want to talk today about something all of us, no one's exempt from this. No one fits that bill, that list perfectly. Everybody here needs to do this. Quit caring. Now, before you get up and leave, because the pastor just said, wait a minute, I need to quit caring. I want you to replace caring. We need to quit caring, and we need to start compassioning. Now, I know that's not a word. But I needed a word that ended with ing to go with caring, and you're going to remember it, compassioning. We can add that to the Dan's Word Dictionary, okay? Quit caring and start compassioning. Let me ask another question. What's the main emotion that you commonly feel? According to whatever website you would subscribe to, I looked at a couple this week. There was somewhere between 6 and 30,000 emotions. Like, that's a wide variety. That's a big gap. I lean towards the 6 because I'm a guy. Girls would say 30,000. We'll meet in the middle, call it 15, okay? But if I said to you, what is the most common emotion that you feel, what would you answer? Annie F. Downs is a fantastic author, fantastic speaker. She's on the teaching team at a church in Nashville called Crosspoint. But she has a podcast called That Sounds Fun. And one of the things that Annie F. Downs says repeatedly is, my emotions can be in the car, they just can't drive. We're allowed to feel emotions, but they can't drive us. What kind of emotion do you commonly feel that drives you? And I think to follow that up, if we're going to be like Jesus, love like Jesus, and serve like Jesus, we have to know some of the emotions that Jesus felt. Like Jesus would have felt the emotion of joy. He would have felt excitement. But he also felt different emotions like fatigue and exhaustion. Like Jesus had to slip away privately, quietly, by himself to the mountainside to pray, to get refueled, because he felt the emotion of fatigue. He felt disgust with the religious leaders and their hypocrisy. He felt disappointment with his disciples. Like if you read through the Gospels at all, you would hear him say, "Do you not get it yet, guys?" He's disappointed with them. He felt grief and anguish and loneliness. One of the things we don't very often talk about is probably the emotion of dread that Jesus felt in the garden. Because he literally said, God, he's about to die on a cross for the sins of humanity. He says, God, can you take this from me? I can't do this. But not my will, but yours. There was a level of dread in Jesus. And yet, if I look at the Gospels and I read the Gospels, one of the greatest emotions that Jesus felt and exhibited, one of his greatest characteristics, was compassion. We have self-centered emotions. Jesus had other people-driven emotions. Everything Jesus did was compassionate. Like think about in Mark, he's driven by compassion. If we care about something, it means we have concern or interest, we have affection, we have a liking for it, and we can show or display concern. But the word compassion means to suffer together. I'm motivated to make a change. This is all intellectual. This is all physical. We need to stop caring and start compassioning, to suffer together, to be inspired and motivated to relieve suffering and to make change. Like in Matthew chapter 9, it says Jesus had compassion on the people and touched their eyes. He had compassion on 2 blind men, 2 people. Caring would have been, it's a bummer you're blind. It's no bueno. That's caring. It stinks. Compassion it's doing, it's physical. In Matthew chapter 20, Jesus had compassion on some people and he prayed for them. And I've talked about this before in previous messages. To say, hey, I'll pray for you and then never do it. No, just pray for that person. If you're going to say you're going to pray for them, pray for them. That's why I often stop with that person that, hey, will you pray for me? Yeah, let's pray right now so I don't forget. Because you matter to me. I'm going to pray for you in this moment. He had compassion and prayed for them. He had compassion on a leper and healed him. Caring would have been, sorry you got a skin disease, guy. That's no good. That's caring. It's a bummer. Compassion is, I'm going to help you. I'm going to suffer with you. I'm going to step towards you and step into it with you. Jesus had compassion for a massive, large crowd and fed them because they were hungry. Listen, compassion is followed by action. And we as a church, and we as a body of believers, and we as followers of Jesus have to stop caring intellectually and start compassioning physically. So how do you know the difference? Compassion is followed by an action. So let me kind of put legs to this for you. If I was driving down the street and I saw a house that was on fire, but I didn't know who lived there, and there were already firefighters there, I would not stop my car and run into the house. I don't know who lives there. I'm not equipped to do it. There's firefighters on the scene. I don't know if everybody got out or not, but I'm not going in there. I don't know them. I don't have a vested interest in them, and I'm going to let the firefighters, the professionals, do their job. But if I pulled up to my house and there were firefighters on the scene, and the house is engulfed in flames, and I don't see Kim, Braylon, Eli, Harrison, Micah, and probably Maple too, my dog, I am blazing into the fire. Wrong word, that's a pun on words. I'm running as fast as I can. You're not stopping me from getting into that house to make sure they're okay. Caring, when I drive by, says, that stinks. They've lost their house, but it looks like everybody's okay. Compassion is, you're not stopping me. This is driven by my love for my wife and my love for my kids. You're not getting in my way. I'm going in. We need to stop caring and start compassioning. You see, Jesus was driven by what other people were going through. He was driven by love. And every person that he came in contact with was a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister. It was family to Jesus. And I believe that our compassion will defeat our indifferences. If we can stop caring intellectually and start compassioning physically, actually engaging with people, it will defeat our indifference. So if you have your Bibles, I'd love for you to open up to Luke chapter 6 and watch this in real life as Jesus compassioned all the time, wherever he was going, whatever he was doing. In Luke chapter 7. So here's the backstory. In Luke 7, he's working his way through a region, and hundreds of people are beginning to follow him, and he's just teaching them. He's helping them. He's healing them. And in Luke 6, he talks about, hey, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Don't judge others. He's giving some morals, some values, some characteristics to live by. And the crowd is eating it up. They're enjoying it. They're learning. He's teaching them something that the religious leaders didn't teach. He even goes on to say, make sure you forgive those who hurt you and ask for forgiveness for those that you've hurt. Make sure you go to the people you've hurt and ask for forgiveness from them. And so he's teaching them, and they're learning, and they're leaning in, and the crowd is growing. And in Luke chapter 7, at the beginning of Luke chapter 7, Jesus is working his way out of the city, out of the region. He's going to another place. And a centurion, who's Roman, not the same nationality, doesn't love Jesus, follow Jesus, serve Jesus, obey Jesus, but believes in Jesus a little bit, says, one of my servants is dead, and I really like him. Can you heal him? Now remember, he doesn't worship God the way Jesus does, the way that the Israelites did. He didn't worship God that way. But there's something different about Jesus. He says, this servant, he's like family to me. Can you heal him? And Jesus speaks the word, and the servant of the centurion is healed. And so the crowd has seen this. The crowd is now really hundreds and hundreds of people just gathered in. And then in chapter 7, verse 11, that just happened. They're working their way. It says, soon after, Jesus went to a town called Nain. And his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. So you can kind of picture this massive group of people. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out. It was the only son of his mother. She was a widow. And a large crowd from the town was with her. So I want you to picture this. There's two groups of people. There's Jesus and his crowd working their way towards Nain. And there's a mother and a funeral procession working their way out of the city of Nain, out of the gate, into the countryside to bury the only son of this mother. So two crowds. One crowd, very quiet, listening to Jesus, learning from Jesus. What's he saying? Hey, keep it down because he's talking. I want to be able to hear him. Approaching. Other crowd, loud, wailing, weeping, mourning. Polar opposite crowds. Now, if you and I saw a dead person being carried down the street on a stretcher, followed by people weeping, wailing, and mourning loudly, we would be taken aback a little bit. That's not normal. We would put the body into a casket. We would bring it to the front of the church, and we would pay our respects and have a service. And then that casket would go into a hearse, and that hearse would go to the graveside, and only the closest family, only the closest friends would gather to pay their last respects. That would be weird for us to see somebody on a stretcher dead marching down the street. This was normal. People died every day. Moms lost their sons, their daughters. Kids lost their parents. People lost their brothers and sisters. This was normal. You have to understand this. This is a normal scene. Coming out of the city to bury a son. But when the Lord saw her, this mother, his heart went out to her, and he said to her, don't cry. So you got to picture this. Large crowd with Jesus. Would have been expected that they would stop, let the funeral procession work their way out. They would stand quietly as the family mourned, as the friends wept and wailed, and off they go, and continuing on would be Jesus and his posse. But that's not what happened. Jesus saw, he cared, but then he went, he compassioned. You see the difference? He saw, if it would have been, when the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her and he felt bad for her. And the funeral procession continued on and away they went. And Jesus went into the city of Nain. That's not what it says. Jesus left the comfort of his group to go to a lady he didn't know and then told her pastoral counseling 101, never tell a family, don't cry. Like this is 101, right? If you've ever been a pastor before or in leadership and ministry, you don't say that to the family. You let them cry. You let them mourn. But Jesus approaches her and went from caring to compassioning because he sees a grieving widow. Her only son is dead, which means she doesn't have a husband, and now the only other man in her life, her son, is gone. And in this culture, that's a huge deal. It's a huge deal in our culture, too. But in this culture, a woman without a male figure in her life was overlooked and outcast, written off. And Jesus knows that, and he has compassion on her. It would have left her desperate and dismissed to not do something. And so he says, don't cry. And then he goes over from the mom, and it says this. Then he went up and he touched the bier, which is the stretcher. They were carrying him on, and the bearers, the pallbearers, stood still. And then he begins to speak to a dead man. Remember, the crowd is still here. The gathering that's following is now quiet. There's no more weeping, wailing. There's no more mourning. What is this guy doing? You don't do this. Young man, I say to you, get up. And the dead man sat up, and he began to talk. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. I want you to actually picture this in your mind. There's a stretcher, slab of wood, a person on it, wrapped up, not covered. It's not a casket. It's open air. And he walks up. And Jesus touches the bier. He touches the stretcher, which means he touched the person. And in this culture, you could probably hear a, you don't do that. One of the 613 laws, 613 rules that they had to follow was do not touch dead people. Not a bad rule. I'm okay for that. I'm all right with that rule. Good rule. Let's follow that one. And Jesus touches the dead person, which in this culture made him unclean. And you know what that means, friends? That means that Jesus does not care about religion. He cares about the relationship. I'm rattling some of your minds right now, he doesn't care about religion because he just broke a law. He just broke the rule, which tells me he cares so much about the relationship with me and so much about the relationship with you that he's willing to get into the mud with you right where you're at. Your life a mess? Awesome. Jesus is in the mess with you. He's not on the other side of the mess waiting for you to come out of it. Jesus is in the mess. Jesus became unclean by touching that body and didn't care. An entire crowd saw it. An entire crowd saw it. He said, I am in this with you. Be healed. Your life a mess? Jesus is with you. Your life in chaos? Jesus is with you. Your life in upheaval, falling apart? Jesus is with you. Your life directionless? Jesus is with you to give you direction. He's in it with you. And he touches the body, and you can almost hear the crowd go, and then you can hear the body go, as life went back into his lungs. Oh, you got to picture this. Not only was the boy saved, the mother was saved. Jesus doesn't just save you, he saves people. It's not singular. It's plural, it's many, it's multiple. When he changes your life, he can change the lives of the people around you. When you change someone else's life by being Jesus to them, you don't just change that person, you change people around you and around them. And the body gasps for life. And so he was alive, and the mother became alive as well. And then it says this. It says they were filled with awe and they praised God. A great prophet has appeared among us, they said. God has come to help his people. And news about Jesus spread throughout Judea, spread about the countryside. You see, the reason that this is important to me is that compassion calls for a response, a physical response. The true test of your compassion is not intellectual. Oh, I care. That's a bummer. That's too bad. It's physical. Do something. And so this narrative teaches us three things that we need to quit. Three really important things we need to quit. Here's number one. Quit thinking there's nothing I can do. I've felt that before. I've thought that before. I've said that. There's nothing I can do. Quit thinking that. Quit. There is something you can do. We're going to unpack that. You ever heard of the bystander effect? So in the late 60s, a psychologist, Bip Lantane and John Darley, put legs and kind of handles to the concept of bystander effect, but it really became more common language and common knowledge in the past 20 or so years. It's when crowds of people witness and record something tragic happening, but no one does anything about it in the moment. We saw this a couple years ago with George Floyd. Everybody recorded it, but nobody did anything about it in the moment. Bystander effect. Kevin Carter was victim of the bystander effect. You might not recognize the name. He was a well-known photographer, well-known photojournalist born in South Africa. He was upper middle class. And he took a picture in 1993 that not only highlighted a severe famine in Sudan, but it won him a Pulitzer Prize. But what's interesting about the picture that he took was the criticism he received for it. This picture was taken in 1993. Still in circulation today. Still shown today. Still published today. It was taken by Kevin Carter. What's not known is that Kevin Carter allegedly waited 20 minutes for the vulture behind the starving, dying Sudanese girl, waiting for the vulture to spread its wings because he felt that that picture would elicit more response from the viewers. And so he waited 20 minutes, camera ready, while she was trying to crawl to food. That should stir something inside of all of us. Something. He received criticism, but the bird never spread its wings. So he snapped this picture and moved on. It's also believed that he scared the bird away, but did nothing to help the girl. So he received criticism. What happened to the girl? Why didn't you help her? Where was she? Was she alive when you left her? Why didn't you feed her? Why didn't you pick her up and take her? And he said, my purpose of the picture was to bring light to the corruption in the Sudanese government. That while they were getting rich and eating well, people like this little girl were literally dying on the streets, starving to death. To the left of her and the right of her, outside of the camera frame, thousands more. So I snapped the photo and I left because there was nothing I could do. Shortly after receiving his Pulitzer Prize, Kevin Carter went home and wrote a letter. He said, the pain of life overrides the joy to the point where life and joy do not exist. Depressed, haunted by vivid memories of killings, corpses, anger, and pain. Haunted by the vivid memories of starving and wounded children, trigger-happy madmen. Haunted by the memories of executions. And he left that note in his car in his garage where he killed himself right after he received the Pulitzer Prize through carbon monoxide poisoning. The bystander effect. Listen, we've all done something where we've stood back and we said, I don't know what to do. There's nothing I can do. And sometimes it's out of fear. Listen, I get it. If I step in, I could get hurt. If I step in, I could lose my job. If I step in, I could lose my reputation. If I step in, I could be misinterpreted. I could be sued. Sometimes I'll get canceled if I step in. We live in a cancel-happy culture, and I get it. But we have to stop and quit caring and start compassioning. Because the reality is, nothing I can do translates, I don't know what to do. We need to quit thinking there's nothing I can do. But what we think is, I don't even know what to do. I don't have resources. I mean, Jesus could heal people. If I could heal people, like, you get a healing, and you get a healing, and you get a blessing, and you get a miracle, and you get whatever you want. If I had Jesus' power, we would all be living in paradise. Could be like, you, yes, yes, yes. So we think, well, I don't even know what to do. I don't have a platform. I don't have Ronaldo or Kylie Jenner's followers, 500 million followers on social media. I have 8. Not 8 with the other 0, 8. I have 8. And I don't have the resources like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or LeBron James. I have $8 in my bank account. That's what people, I don't have the resource. I don't have power. I'm not a president. I'm not a prime minister. I'm not a governor. I'm not a mayor. I'm not even on a board. I can't make a difference. Now here's what we think. But if I had those things, I would do something. I'm just going to tell you, if that's your excuse, you're not going to like what I'm about to say. If that's your excuse, even if you had those resources, you still wouldn't do anything. Because if you're not doing it with what you have now, you won't do it with what you have then. If you're not making any type of difference in any person's life now, just because you get more power, money, and influence and fame, you're not going to do it then. I love Andy Stanley. I love his pastoring, his leadership. I love his books. I love what he's done in Atlanta. He had a saying that he kind of coined a few years ago. Back in 1996, he planted a church in northwest Atlanta. 34 people began to meet on a weekend. 34 people in a rented facility. And 26 years later, the church now has 40,000 people meeting on a weekend in 8 different locations because of a simple motto. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Do for one person what you wish you could do for everybody. And if you don't wish you could do anything to help anybody else, you need to check your heart and your soul. There's something wrong with you. But do for one person what you wish you could do for the many. And because of that, they went from 34 people to 40,000 people because they prayed for the one, they invited the one, they broke bread with the one, and they stepped towards the one. We need to quit thinking there's nothing I can do. And remember, there is. You can pray for somebody. Changes the heart of God, moves heaven to move earth. Prayer works. You can invite somebody. You can break bread with somebody. You can invite someone to lunch. You can step towards the lost, the least, and the overlooked. Here's the second thing we need to quit thinking. Quit thinking, well, someone else will do it. I don't know what to do. I'm just hoping somebody else will do it. A few years ago, when we lived in Kalamazoo, about 5 houses down, one of our neighbor's house early on a Monday morning went up in flames. It caught fire, and it literally went up in flames. And firefighters came in, and paramedics came in, and volunteer firefighters came in. And Kim and I went out and kind of watched as this young couple with twins got out of the house. They were fine. They got their dog Barley out. They were safe, but they were watching everything they had go up in flames. And Kim looked down and saw that Allison is the wife's name, the mom's name, that run out of the house, rightfully so, but forgot to put shoes on. It was February, it was cold winter, and so Kim ran home and got a pair of shoes and brought them back to Allison. And then we realized we need to do something. And so we met with Allison and chatted and said, listen, what size are the twins in? We're going to be a drop spot. We're going to rally the troops, and we're going to go around our neighborhood. We had 65 houses in the neighborhood, and we're going to be a drop spot for gift cards, for diapers, for wipes, for baby clothing, for pack and plays, whatever. Tell us what you need. We had dozens of families respond, which was amazing, kind of brought our community together. But every person that came to our house, every person that gave said this: we wanted to do something. We didn't know what to do. We just hoped somebody else would do it. Now, I want to tell you something. When Kim and I met and kind of hung out with Chad and Allison, and we said, hey, what do you guys need? Like, what size, all those things. You know what we didn't say? Hey, before we help you guys, I got to know where you stand on a few things. What's your political party? I got to know, do you pray to God like Jesus God, or do you pray to different gods? What's your charitable donations been like this year? Did you give to anybody else, or are you guys self-centered? Do you support same-sex marriage? Do you support and kind of support marijuana for recreational use? Do you think like me, dress like me, act like me, vote like me, pray like me? Do you look like me? Then we'll help. None of that came up in conversation. It was, what do you need? What size are the twins? What kind of formula do they use? Do you have a preference on diapers? Huggies or Pampers? Do you want scented or unscented wipes? What's your favorite restaurant? Because that's what we're going after. It was nothing about them emotionally, relationally with their party. Who cares about that stuff? See a need, meet a need. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Now, I want you to understand, soon afterward, Jesus went down to a town called Nain. His disciples and a large crowd went along with him. As he approached the town gate, a person was being carried out. And I want you to understand that Jesus had no earthly connection to this woman. He didn't know her. He had no earthly connection. There might be somebody that you don't even know that needs a word from you, a hope from you, a gift from you, an encouragement from you, a prayer from you. You have no earthly connection to them. But they need it from you. They don't know it, you don't know it. But God does. Divine appointment for Jesus. No knowledge of this person. And in fact, if you want to get really technical, the people didn't even ask for his help. Nowhere in the scripture, as Jesus is walking along, did the crowd that was wailing, weeping, mourning, screaming, crying, sad say, hey, that's Jesus, he can help us. Jesus saw the need, walked over, engaged, and helped. Sometimes you're going to be stirred on and stirred within you to do something, and you're not even going to be asked by that person to do it. Follow the prompt. Stop just caring and start compassioning. Dan, you're fired up. I am. This really gets me going. 330,000 people in Westmoreland County. 30,000 have religious affiliation, which means 300,000 people around us are dying and going to hell. And if that doesn't stir within you, I can't do that for you. It's a lot of humans that need hope, help, and healing from Jesus. And Jesus had no earthly connection. But what he teaches us is that we're to be compelled towards compassion. Quit thinking someone else will do it, and be that someone. Help someone, serve someone, give to someone, bless someone, pray for someone, invite someone, break bread with someone. Be compelled towards action. And here's the third thing we need to quit. We need to quit apathy. I just don't care that much. Now, if I said, show of hands, how many of you started or quit New Year's resolution? There'd be a few that would raise their hands, or internally we would go, well, yeah. If I said, how many of you just don't care that much? Nobody's going to do this. But a lot of us don't care about anybody but ourselves. Not you, other churches. Our church is really good at that. No, there's some of us in this room that are so self-focused, and I'll just say this. It's a dangerous place for a Christian to land when they reach a point where they're so jaded and so calloused that they are simply indifferent to a lonely, hurting person around them. Jesus was on his way. If he had had apathy, a lack of feeling, no emotion, impassiveness, lack of interest, no concern, he wouldn't have stopped. He wouldn't have stopped. He would have stood by, would have been respectful, would have let the procession go, and then he would have walked back in through the city gates of Nain onto what he was there to do. He was going to Nain. He wasn't going to a funeral. There will be times when you're on your way somewhere and something stirs inside. That's called conviction. That's called Holy Spirit stirring within you. You need to stop and follow that. A few weeks ago, I was driving up just past Wilkinson's nursery up that big hill, and there was a car stopped in the middle of the road, four ways on. Car going around. It was just at the top of the hill. So car going around could get hit coming this way. So I stopped about 30 yards back, put my blinkers on, and I ran up and I said, what do you need? How can I help you? He said, the car won't start. It's dead. I said, well, let's put it in neutral and let's get it off to the side of the road before you get killed. I don't say that to brag about myself. I'm just saying it's so easy to help somebody. It's so easy. Caring would have been like, well, that's a bummer. He's broke down. My car works. Sucker. That's caring a little bit-ish. Compassion says, I got to stop. This person could get hurt. Or the people going around him at the top of a hill blind could get hit head on. And if that's my family in that car, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. It's very easy. It's not hard to compassion. It's not. Look for people to help, serve, give. It becomes a dangerous place for a Christian to reach a point where they're so jaded and so callous they become so indifferent to lonely and hurting people around them. Now, here's what we do. We disguise our apathy with other responsibilities. Well, I got to take care of me. I got to look out for me. I got to protect mine. I can't help you. I'm hurting myself. I need a blessing. I need something in here. One of Satan's greatest techniques to derail the move of God is to derail the people of God. One of the greatest ways that Satan wants to disrupt our church and the move of God here is to derail you and get you focused on something called athleisure. Have you heard of this, athleisure wear? Anybody? Some of you probably wear athleisure wear. Here's what it is. Athleisure wear is a hybrid style of athletic clothing typically worn as everyday wear. It includes yoga pants, tights, sneakers, leggings that look like athletic wear, but it's characterized as fashionable dress-up sweats and comfortable clothing and optional to exercise in. You're like, Dan, what in the world has happened to you? Why are you talking about clothing? Here's why. This is a currently $260 billion a year industry, athleisure. It's projected to grow $1 billion every year for the next 5 years, to become an $800 billion a year industry. And it sums up our culture. We like to wear running shoes, but we don't like to run. We like to wear yoga pants, but we don't like to yoga. We want to wear sweatpants, but we don't want to sweat. We want to dress comfortable and relax. We want to look like we work out and not do it. And friends, I'm just going to tell you this, the church, not just this church, the North American church has become very athleisure. We like to look good on Sunday and yet do nothing on Monday. And I am fired up about this. It's really easy to see somebody else and meet a need. You don't have to have resources and platforms. You can pray for somebody. You can take a meal to somebody. You can pay it forward in the line to somebody. A few weeks ago, Kim and I were in Aldi doing some grocery shopping before Christmas. And I don't know if we looked like we didn't even have our lives together, but a lady came up to us and she's like, just wanted to give you a $20 Aldi gift card. You have kids, it looks like you might need that. We're like, touche. They saw a need and they met a need. It's actually not hard to look at somebody else. Listen, I don't want to say our church. I'll say this though, we're leaning that way a little bit. That we want to look good on Sunday. But what are we doing on Monday? Stop thinking somebody else will do it. Stop thinking somebody else is gonna talk to the neighbor and ask how they're doing. Somebody else is gonna ask that coworker how their divorce is going, how they're doing emotionally and mentally and financially and physically. Somebody else will do that. Somebody else will make sure that those neighbors' kids who usually don't have a lot of food, somebody else will make sure they're okay tonight. Stop thinking somebody else will do it and be that somebody and help them. It's time to go beyond good intentions and start living like Jesus lived, loving like Jesus loved, serving how Jesus served, giving how Jesus gave, and seeing how Jesus saw others. See, compassion isn't a feeling, it's an action, and the compassion, the action becomes the stories we tell. I'll close with this. I don't know if you've followed this week. This is a football player, Damar Hamlin, plays for the Buffalo Bills. Last Monday night during the football game, he made a tackle on a Cincinnati Bengals player. He hit him. The Bengals player hit this guy, and they kind of clashed together. They fell down. Everybody got right back up. Play was over, and then Damar Hamlin just fell right over. His heart stopped, cardiac arrest. Died on the field for 8 minutes. Gone for 8 minutes. Paramedics came out, they CPR, they brought him back to life. And what's interesting is an entire football organization, it's okay to kneel now. We weren't allowed to kneel then, but we can kneel now because there's compassion. It's beyond caring, oh, that's too bad, he died. No, it's compassion. I'm going to do something about this. And an entire 2 teams gathered and prayed in the middle of the field. In a company, in a business that is so anti-Jesus, so anti-church, so anti-God. But then there was something else that happened out of it. See, Damar Hamlin had a toy drive that he had started for his community. He's from Pittsburgh. His goal was to raise, during the pandemic, $2,500 for his toy drive. As of this morning, it's over $8 million. When I wrote this part of the message on Thursday, it was 6.5 million. So between Thursday and today, it's gone to 8. Because it's compassion. I saw something happen, there's a cause, and I'm going to get behind it. I'm going to help. And most of the gifts are $10, $20, and $30. It doesn't take a lot to help somebody. What's even more amazing from this, to me, is if you're not a sports fan, this might not affect you. Dan Orlovsky is a ESPN analysis. He's a commentator. He's a Christian in a very unchristian company. In fact, ESPN has canceled and fired people for proclaiming faith. They're so anti-Jesus. On Thursday night, during NFL Live, a television program, a television show that it happens for an hour, Dan Orlovsky was live on air. It was his turn to speak. And he literally said, I'm going to pray right now for Damar Hamlin. I'm going to bow my head. I'm going to close my eyes. And he said to his co-host, you can either join me or not, but I'm going to take Damar to Almighty Heavenly Father. And right there on air for 40 seconds across hundreds of millions of homes, platforms, social media, he prayed in the most anti-Jesus platform on TV right now. ESPN hates Jesus. And he put Jesus in 100 million homes. It takes one step, one courage, one thing to stop just caring and start compassioning. It's an action. Jesus didn't need to stop, but he had to stop. He couldn't not stop. If compassion is an action, who will be your one this year? If compassion becomes the stories we tell, who's the one person in your life, or who's the one person that may not even be in your life, you just know them fringe. You just know of them. And that's going to be the theme for this series, the one. Who's the one person? Dan, there's nothing I can do. Hogwash, there is. I just don't care. You got to wrestle that down between you and God. I can't fix that for you. Who's the one person that you're going to pray for? The one person you're going to invite to lunch and talk to them and invest in them. Who's the one person that you're going to invite to church? And they might come here, they might not. They might find Jesus here, they might not. But they need Jesus, and so that's the one person for you. Do for the one what you wish you could do for everybody.